Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to the latest episode of the Hard Compound Live. For those of you who don't know, my name's Rich, and I run and operate the Hard Compound. We are a motorsports one-stop shop, really, based on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, and we cover all kinds of motorsport from the BTCC to F1, IndyCar, NASCAR, bikes, rallying, and all the weird stuff in between. And we cover it by the way of race reviews, race previews, news articles, breaking news, on this day's throwbacks, birthdays, all that kind of stuff. Loads and loads of good motorsport stuff for you all to enjoy. We also provide online support for some of the very best young drivers and riders in the UK. In case you hadn't noticed, we also do live interviews. We've done a number of them now with a number of absolutely fantastic guests from across the motorsport spectrum. We've had the honour and the privilege of speaking with Mr. Mario Andretti and Mr. Jackie Ickx, which was superb. From the bikes world, we've spoken to a number of the Bennett's British Superbike riders. We've spoken with the likes of Ari Lyndike, Danny Sullivan. Just last week, we spoke with James Hinchcliffe. We've spoken with Will Power, all these guys from the IndyCar world. And we've spoken with a number of F1 sports car, touring car type guys. Steve Soper, Andy Prio, Matt Neal, Rob Gravitt. We've spoken with David Brabham, Stephanie Hansen, Derek Warwick, Mika Salo, Eddie Cheever, many fantastic guests. And we've also spoken with a number of the current British touring car crop guys such as Jake Hill, Tom Chilton, Michael Crease, Jade Edwards, Ollie Jackson, and the like, which leads us very nicely on to our guest this evening. He's raced in a number of series, single seaters in the UK, right through to GT racing at home in the UK and on the continent. And he's currently a BTCC driver, very well-known name within the series. So we're going to bring him in right now. Without further ado, please join me in extending a very warm welcome to Mr. Ricky Collard.
Can you hear us?
Ricky and Rob,
how are we? Yeah, we're good, thank you.
Guys, how are you?
Very well.
Very well, yeah, very well, thank you. I'm very well, we've got a reload on the ground, but we'll be fine. How are you guys?
Yeah, good work. We've been at work today. The family business is actually in waste and trade waste, so we've actually been working today, and we're reporting actually from Farnborough Air Show, where we've just been putting in a bit of a graft.
See the map in the background.
Yeah, putting in a bit of grafting.
Been quite a warm day, a bit of work, but you need to go. We'll keep things moving.
Yeah, 100%.
You got to keep it real. Keep it real.
Absolutely. He was at a plane taking off.
Actually, I just closed the door.
No. If you close the door next to the signal, you lose the signal.
That's alright, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's like a bit of background noise.
There you go. It's a bit different anyway.
Happy days. So yeah, obviously you've got the Farnborough Air Show going on, and I guess you guys are going to be busy for that.
Yeah. It's the actual business has got lots of different sort of groups. It's called Collard Group, and then we've got recycling, we've got demolition, we've got aggregates, we've got ready mix concrete, and obviously this is one of our biggest times of the year really for the waste side of the business and recycling side, because obviously with all these stands there's a lot of trade waste that needs to be looked after, and that's where we can recycle a lot of the products and put them back into society, which is good, especially with, and the other thing as well, you look at it with touring cars now going to renewable fuels and hybrids, and hopefully we've been doing our little part over the last 28 years of recycling, but it's great to see that the championship's moving in that direction as well.
Yeah, it's good. It's good with guys like you and a number of people around the country doing that, going green. I'm just up the road from you guys, so I've seen your vans and lorries and all that driving over the years. So I'm very familiar with what you guys do, and obviously me and Ricky, I think we're quite similar with our jobs. We're both on the estimating side, from what I can gather.
Well, that's the thing. So it's still a family business. So I was doing a lot of the estimating for the demolition department. So that'd be estimating how much it would be to knock down a building, but then at the same time, the recycling element of that comes into it as well, because obviously we don't want to put anything into landfill, and the more money we can save in recycling these products will make us more competitive on our demolition. So that's why it's good to be here today, looking at how we recycle our waste, because then I know that when we go into our demolition, I can look at things in slightly different ways.
Excellent. They're all kinds of fantastic.
Right, no,
Right, no, I've got insights. We are here for motorsport this evening. Obviously, you guys have been involved in motorsport for a long time. Normally, we ask how you got into motorsport, but it's quite obvious in this instance. And obviously there was a generation before you, Rob, wasn't there? Your father was a hot rod racer.
Yes, so with Ricky and Jordan are sort of 3 generations of racing drivers. So my father raced for many years on the stock car tracks and raced hot rods. He was British, European and world champion. I started on the short oval circuits, a lot of people would know that. And when you look back over the years, the short ovals have brought up lots of top class racing drivers, Formula 1 stars, IndyCar stars, people in DTM, sports cars, obviously touring cars, and it's something that I moved into. Ricky and Jordan, when they grew up, they started in karting, so they've never raced on an oval, but they, I think that's the oval racing is very good and it teaches you a lot. But obviously you learn a lot more from karting if you're going to become a circuit racer. So it took me quite a few years of transition from oval racing into circuit racing. Whereas Ricky came out of karting, was banged straight into a single seater and was winning races against sort of all of the big names at that time in single seaters. And now he's moved in from GT racing back into touring cars. And it's a real pleasure to see Ricky doing so well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of people are going to see the Pollard name back.
Yeah, it's great. I think Ricky's got a great following on social media, and that's something that's very important for young drivers to build their profile. It's something probably I don't spend much time on. I never did spend a lot of time on really on social media, because probably I'm of the older generation, shall we say.
How many Twitter followers you got?
20,000, I think.
More than that.
Yeah, I don't know, but
far more than I have.
Yeah, and me.
I haven't. Sorry, one of the guys is just saying goodbye. That's cool. I haven't been on Twitter very much actually recently. You sort of, when you're when you're actually touring car racing and you're doing it, you follow and you push your profile as much as possible. So over the last couple of years, I've sort of probably dropped off the radar a little bit, but it's been very nice when I've been to watch Ricky. The amount of people that sort of still recognise you, still want to talk to you, want to have a catch up. What am I doing? They're very interested. They know from my family. They've watched me for many years, and whereas now it's people are asking me questions, not necessarily what I'm up to, it's what Ricky and Jordan are up to. So it's a really nice feeling.
Yeah, it's nice to have the interest. And we've spoken to a lot of BTCC guys on here. We spoke with like Gabriel Queenie and John Clelland, and they all seem amazed that everyone still remembers them. And that's obviously something about the most community, isn't it? The touring car community.
Yeah, I think touring cars is very special in the fact it's got accessibility to it, and it's something I think you lose it a little bit at Brands Hatch, because you've got the tunnel where people can't really get across. But other tracks like Silverstone and Donington and Alton Park and stuff, the drivers are very, very accessible, and I think that's the strength that builds the profile. Obviously, social media now builds a lot of profile. The ITV4 and actually ITV1 this year is fantastic for the championship, and the championship's going from strength to strength. The crowds are coming back. We obviously had the whole lockdown issue, COVID lockdown, which sort of wasn't very good for any sport in general. But now people are coming back, and it's fantastic to see, and we've got a great summer in front of us.
Yeah, and then you've got sun for Knock Hill, which doesn't often happen.
It might even be sunny at Knock Hill. You never know.
Well, who knows? I mean, it's the only place I've ever been where I wanted to go to the merchandise store and buy some gloves. I've never had to do that anywhere.
Yeah. It's no, I think Knock Hill was a fantastic circuit for me over the years, and I'm very pleased to see Ricky going there next. And I think after doing the 2-day tyre test where Ricky found good pace and I think a good balance with the car, I'm hoping the second half of the season really works well for him, and I think Knock Hill will suit his driving style a little bit, because it's the sort of track where you got to grab hold of the car and really wrestle the car, and I think that's something that will suit his style.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're going to come into the second half of this meeting very soon. There's good signs this season, but certainly all the parts in place. But I'd like to go right back to the start-ish with you, Ricky. When you went karting, you started karting around age 9 or 10, from what I've researched.
Yeah.
Was it just a case of following what your dad was doing? Was there someone talk you out of it, into it, or?
No, it was just my dad. We used to have a little dirt cart. My idol at the time was Colin McRae. I used to just ride the dirt cart around all the time, and I didn't like it when the engine used to start, so Dad used to have to push me at the start, and then eventually he said, no, you're going to have to use the engine. And then that's how it really started. But I think my dad never forced me into it. He just showed me that was something that you could do if you wanted to do it, if you enjoyed it, and it's something that I absolutely loved. And like I say, went all through karting, then into British level, into European, and then even into the world stuff. Unfortunately, I had a pretty big accident in karts where I broke my shoulder in 2 places, collarbone, fractured 5 ribs, 2 of my vertebrae, ruptured my lung, had internal bleeding. Was on a life support machine in Italy, and I then since then I've never driven a go-kart really. Done like the charity karting races and stuff like that, which is still good fun. But I wanted to then make a route change and try and get into cars, because I thought, I do think the cars are safer.
Well, certainly on the basis of the injuries you got in karting, absolutely. I had no idea that. Wow. Everything's good. Just mentioning about the karting. You went through. I got you came 4th in the British cadet in 2009. Into KS3 with Kart Masters. 2012 came 8th overall, and then into the world. Sorry, that was 8th overall in the world. Kart's always been a good proving ground, isn't it? I mean, we've got a list of the people who have been successful in the world karting. You've got like 3 Philippines that you all know about. You got like Jan Magnussen, you got like Jarno Rulli, you got like Guido, some bloke called Lando. They've all kind of come through, and it's just a good proving ground, isn't it? Before you make the step into cars.
Yeah, so like I say, some of the races in the World Championships, I was teammates of like your Charles Leclerc's, raced against Verstappen. In the World Championships in particular, managed to get the better side of Charles Leclerc, which was quite an achievement. Now he's in Formula 1 as a Ferrari driver, but no, I enjoyed my karting, but if I'm honest, I don't really agree with some of the things in karts, with the way the costs are for young drivers, and so to get into cars was like a breath of fresh air, and I preferred the car stuff a lot more than the karting, if I'm honest.
No, sure. I've actually had a chat with Terry Stilton last. He's done exactly the same thing. Obviously, he's still making cuts and chassis. And he says that he tried to do it for the cheapest he can because the costs are just flying up from where they used to be. So,
there's parents out there paying more money for their 10 or 12-year-old kids to do karting than sort of you would be paying if you were in F4 or F3 virtually. It's absolutely ridiculous, the budgets in European karting for young drivers, and I know this firsthand from bringing Ricky and Jordan through the ranks. The budgets in karting are absolutely obscene. We were very lucky as a family to be. Ricky was very lucky as well. I'll rephrase. Ricky was very lucky to be picked up by the Race and Step Foundation, the RSF, and that bankrolled and kept him at the highest level of karting for the periods that we were doing it. And he was an RSF driver when he had his accident, which ended his karting career. So that was something that we would never have been able to race at the European level of karting without the backing of the RSF. And you look now, and I don't know any organisations really that are out there that are helping young drivers, and that's a shame really, because it's a bit like football. All the money sort of sits at the top, and there's nothing coming down through the grassroots. And I think that's a bit of a concern. If I could turn anything around or change anything in motorsport, is not to have it so heavily related on personal funding, because that doesn't always bring the best drivers to the front.
Absolutely. I think the football now is a good one. The bigger clubs, the teams get. They get the benefit of all the money and everything that paid down. Which isn't sustainable for most in the long run. I don't think better than I do. But
yeah, I think if you look back, back in the 80s and the 90s with touring car, you had a lot of manufacturers involved and some big sponsors. The manufacturers and the big sponsors have more or less all gone, and it's a little bit of smoke and mirrors with some of the sponsors that are out there at the moment in touring cars. And really, you've got to try and take the model from Australia with V8 supercars, or from NASCARs in America. You might only have 2 manufacturers or 3 manufacturers, but you have some massive commercial sponsors, and it's the commercial sponsors that are funding the race teams, and that allows the race teams then to pick the best drivers, not necessarily the driver that brings the biggest budget. And that's really a little bit, which is a bit disappointing in Formula 1 at the moment. You're looking at Formula 1 with some of the drivers that are in Formula 1, they don't necessarily deserve to be there, and that sort of happens really right the way through the whole sort of spectrum of racing from Formula 1, and that feeds all the way down into karting, and that's a shame for the sport.
Yeah, definitely. You mentioned with the supercars, you've got the likes of Andretti and Penske in there, because they've got Castrol and Red Bull and Shell and all these brands, which obviously don't seem to take an interest in motorsport, perhaps the way it's set up, which is a shame. Yeah,
the championship is incredibly popular at the moment, and that's going. And the more and more popular it becomes, the easier it is for teams and drivers to find sponsorship. My racing career has been very lucky. I've been able to race for big teams like West Surrey Racing, where we had money from RAC, or we had money from eBay or Gardex, BMW as a manufacturer supported it as well. So that point of view it was very good. You've got to look now, and the more and more the championship gets popular, the easier it is for all the teams and all the drivers to get sponsors. And that's what, again, you look at British Superbikes, that there's a lot of manufacturers in there, and at least 50% of the grid in Superbikes are getting paid. And that's because the teams predominantly have the sponsorship. and you have a look, you look around the race circuits, and you see advertising boards everywhere with superbikes, and I feel that's something that, again, with touring car, I'd like to see a bit more commercial sponsorship, because it'd bring all the teams up to a higher level if they had more money to play with, and they would also be a bit more selective with some of the drivers as well.
Yeah,
and I think
Yeah,
that'd
be a
be
bit more
really good.
involved. So, you know, all the BSB
teams
teams they've got,
almost
like sporting them.
I've just
I've just seen Michael Creed just put Rich Energy on their comments. Well,
Go on. Yeah.
we will
skip over that.
What did Michael say?
He said
He's just put Rich Energy in the comments. But we'll leave that. Not getting into that now.
Go on, Creasy.
Is he typing? Okay. Michael Creed did just say about the sound. Yes, folks, there is the reverb. You might have to lip read.
Yeah.
What, on us or on you?
I think it's at your end. When I talk, it echoes.
Ah.
But no one is saying that. That's fine. Michael Creed, why are you sponsored by Collards?
What do you say? Why don't we all get sponsored by Collards?
I'd like to share the love.
Go on, I'll sponsor you if you let me past.
Tactical wrestling, I'm not going for that. Say that about the bike. You've got brands like McCann in there, like Rich Energy and all that. And it raises the profile, it raises the backing to the series. Which as you say, is something that we'd like to see in the BTCC system.
It would be. It's great that some of the energy drinks are coming in, and if we can get more soft drinks, whether it's Coca-Cola or Red Bull or anything like that, household names is what this championship really needs. Motorbase have been really good over the years. With when I drove for Motorbase, we had Airwaves, the chewing gum people, shredded wheat. This is the examples I'm trying to say, where you get big household names, and the more and more people we get through the turnstiles, and more TV coverage, more and more social media coverage, more and more radio coverage. All of this really helps, and it helps the teams, it helps the drivers. Not that we're trying to get a big fat salary out of it, but it is a business, and unfortunately it depends on money.
Which is always the case, as we touched on with karting or with mini bike, whatever it might be, there's always money needed in racing. For example, I think it went down in Hamish, team dynamics.
Yeah.
And they said, why is Dan Rowbottom even given the drive? No one's given a drive. Dan brings Paddling and all that. And I think people don't seem to understand that it's what a driver can bring at the moment that gets them on the grid.
It's very much it's very important for drivers. It's the only way we can actually make it work. Tom Ingram's a fantastic example of this. Michael Crease, Jack Goff. There's so many drivers out there that are so busy trying to find sponsors, and it doesn't matter if that's a sponsor for £500 or a sponsor for £100,000. It's the only way that drivers can get on the grid, or teams can get drivers to the grid. And it's a combination of both coming together. The teams get sponsors, and drivers find sponsors, and that's something that Ricky's had to do, Jordan's had to do it, I've had to do it, and as a family we work incredibly hard, to find sponsors, and that's something that underpins motorsport. People do have some family money, but it's predominantly through sponsorship. Whether that's teams or whether there's prize money. Drivers love to win prize money, and that's something, again, I feel it would be really, really nice to see more prize money available to drivers and teams.
Yeah, and Michael Cruz agrees. He's just put 100% in the comments. But he would.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it'd be basically we'd all like to see a bit more investment, a bit more return for those who invest in. Whether it be a big brand or somebody waving a checkbook or whoever it might be, it has to work both ways.
Yeah, when you look at, what would be a really good example?
NASCAR.
Well, if you went like IndyCar and you actually now look at Formula One, you got Haas. Haas is a race team, but predominantly behind the scenes, Haas is a manufacture heavy equipment for making lathes and machinery. So Haas is actually a brand of equipment, but people only really know it as a Formula One team. But, you look at this, and it's again, some of the other big American race teams, they've got huge organisations behind the race team in industry.
I think the biggest one is Penske, isn't it?
Yeah, Penske, yeah, exactly.
Enormous.
Yeah.
And he's now bought into that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, hopefully something can make it more appealing.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll see.
Sorry, I'm hijacking Ricky's interview here, so I'll get out of the way. Crack on with it.
It's like how both people are doing, right? Just to... Sorry, someone did say that the volume of your end might be a bit loud, and that's why it's disturbing. I don't know if we're able to tweet with the volume on your side.
We're struggling to hear you.
Okay, we'll leave it at today. Fine. No problem. Just let read. When you went into Genesis, a couple of races. Well.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Yeah, thanks.
Alton Park.
Yeah. When I went back in there in F4, I think it was a lot better. But no, that was just. I was doing quite well in karting, and there was a scholarship. I'd never driven a car in my life, and went there and was quicker than everyone else at the scholarship. And they said, "Do you want to jump in and do a race?" And I said, "Yeah, it's fine." And I remember in practice 1, the car caught fire. Practice 2, they had to try and. I missed practice 2 because obviously the thing caught fire. Qualifying was alright, and then race 1 was. I can't remember, and then race 2 I rolled it, so yeah. Thanks.
Good start. Really well.
But no, Alton Park is actually probably one of my favourite circuits. I was so unlucky the other month when we went there. I just missed my grid box by a couple of inches, which is just silly. And obviously I think we deserve to have that podium, but especially with having the championship leader Josh Cook behind you for the whole race, I think that it was a bit of a kick in the teeth. But I've always really liked that circuit. I went there in British Formula 3 and qualified on pole for both races, won both races, had fast lap in both races, and with the touring cars I would like to have had a podium there. Had a podium on the road, but then unfortunately took the penalty. So no, Alton Park's actually probably one of my favourite circuits, and I think we're moving on then to Croft. Croft was just frustrating. I think having that puncher in race 1, 2 laps from the finish. When we were 11th in race 1 until we had the puncher. Yeah. Run at 11th, get the puncher, you then straight to the back of the grid, caught another puncher in race 2 with one of the Infinities just driving down the side of the car, and then in race 3 I had another puncher. But what was really interesting, I got a puncher on the front left rear, right rear, so I caught a puncher on every single tyre. If we had 4 races I might have done a full set. But it's just the luck at the moment, we just can't write it. Even in qualifying at Alton Park, and and at Croft, the red flags is just coming out at just the wrong time, just as the tyres come in. But you know, I'm just hoping that that's all the bad luck out the way now, and that we can just focus on the second half of the season.
Yeah, I've been saying it all season, right from media day where we wanted to chat and everything. You seem to be something around there, and just and the pace seems to be there, and things just didn't seem to work or didn't fall into place in the first half of the season. And as you say, the luck's not being with you, but when it's all come together like at Alton, you've shown that you're a front-end runner and more. And how frustrating is it when things just don't quite click? Because it's got to find around the twist.
Yeah, it's just like you say. It's the unfortunate things. You know, look at the first round, race 1 at Donington Park. The drive shaft goes in race 1, and that's when you're running P10. So then you start at the back for race 2. Come through. I think I made like 15 places, and then have contact, which then damaged the car. So then you start at the back again then for race 3. And then you then look at race 1 at Croft. That happens, and then you're out then starting at the back then for race 2 and race 3, and it's just so difficult to come through when you're at the back. But the amount of overtakes I've done this year is just bonkers. But it's just, unfortunately, had nothing to show for it at the moment. But like I said, we know the pace is there. I think that hopefully after the tyre test as well, which is pretty strong, I think we were 6th fastest overall there. I'm hoping that we've made some steps in the right direction with the way the car rides the curbs, so that should definitely help us when we go to Knockhill with the nature of the circuit there. And you know, it's no secret, but the M Sport engine is not up to scratch at the moment. You know, we've seen that throughout the field with everyone that's running an M Sport engine, and I hope that, you know, over this summer break, I know that M Sport are working hard behind the scenes to try and improve the engine, as I am with my fitness, trying to improve that, and with simulator training and the team with the car setup. We're all trying as hard as we can, but it just feels like when everything's right in this direction and this direction, something else goes wrong. But you know, it's just luck. It's when last time I drove Knockhill was in the 1 series, and I come away from there with 2-point scoring finishes in only my second weekend. So I hope that I can get a minimum of 2-point scoring finishes this weekend or in a couple weeks time. But you know, the beauty of it is I've always been fighting for championships. I've never finished outside the top 2 in a British Championship, so to be right at the back where I am now, it just means I've got nothing to lose. So I can just go out there and race for wins, not podiums, but just wins. It doesn't matter about the points for me now. It just is all about going out there and just trying to collect as much champagne and silverware for the team as possible.
And on that note, obviously your teammate Rory knows Knockhill quite well. He's been there once or twice. I guess you'll be picking his brain about the car and the circuit and things like that.
Yeah, Rory's been fantastic, and he's really nice guy, and he's helped me out massively as a teammate. But like you say, I've got my dad there, and my dad's obviously got hundreds and hundreds of thousands of laps in touring cars.
Not that many. I'm not that old.
Well, you know, so there's a bank of knowledge there. So it's really nice in the evening sometimes on a Friday or Thursday or even Saturday. We can just sit down and just talk about things and work things out. And it comes to when we do a track walk, we talk about things, and you know, I don't have to be doing all my preparation at the track. I can do it away from the track, just at the dinner table, and we just talk about ideas and whatever sort of situations come. My dad's already sort of been there and done that, so it's great having Rory as a teammate. But I've also got my dad's experience as well. So
you got Rob Austin.
Yeah, and yeah, not to forget as well Rob Austin at Speedworks. He's really good. So I've got 2 Robs and a Rory and a Ricky.
all the R's. If you need a fifth car, you can join in. I mean,
perfect. Yeah.
But I'm not. I actually spoke to Rory on media day. He said that he's coming and having a chat. But getting hold of him is like trying to get hold of Lord Luton.
There's no signal in Scotland. It's send a pigeon.
Maybe I'll try that.
And
Rob Austin, get him on.
But was it
Brands Hatch? You said it was the first time that you'd left a race with them without scoring points. I remember you saying that.
Yeah.
I think
Brands again, look at Brands Hatch. We went out for race 1 and the intercooler actually exploded. So I had no turbo. So I just, finished right. They did say to box, but to be honest, I just said to her, I said, why? It makes you look really stupid, but I said, can I just stay out and just keep getting the laps despite having no turbo? I said, just so I can get the laps in the car, but also just collect a couple of places as people fall off throughout the race. But it's just every weekend at the moment we're just being really unlucky with DNS or issues in race 1, and then you're at the back then for race 2. You miss difficult to go for a reverse grid in race 2 to get within that reverse grid, and then race 3. It becomes a bit of a longer weekend, but it's difficult as well. I think with the hybrid as well, it's not making as much of a difference as what I found when I was there before, when we had the ballast. And I think that's something that the championship really should look at, maybe, because I think the racing was a lot more interesting, a lot more fun, a lot more exciting when we had the weight, because you couldn't just drive off into distance and all through races.
The hybrid brings a bit of strategy, but as you say, it seems to have just taken the edge off. Certainly race 3. From the fans' point of view, we're there for the entertainment as well as the race and everything else. And it's interesting that you said that about the balance. I spoke with Justine Williams, and she's not a fan of either. I guess you come down on the balance side of things if you were going to have one of them.
If it was my decision, I'd just make the hybrid more powerful. Because the issue you got with the hybrid, it's 30 horsepower, which sounds like quite a lot, but we can't use it low in the rev range. The rules are you have to be in second gear and you have to be over 100 kilometers an hour. So the effect it has at that sort of speed, a lot of drivers when we were first testing it, we just said we couldn't actually feel, you can't feel the difference, and that's the problem we've got in the racing, is you can't actually feel much of a difference to be able to launch a big overtake. And you look at a good example of that would be, you look at the IndyCar stuff, and they've got their push to pass, and this hybrid needs to be a bit more powerful so it is more like a push to pass. That would allow us to then use it in different places and do surprise overtakes, rather than just, at the moment, everyone's just using it in the same place as well, which makes it a bit monogamous.
I guess if you're behind someone who's using a hybrid to defend, it's not a hybrid.
Yeah, that's exactly what it does. And we speak with our engineers, and all of us drivers, we all speak to engineers, and they all tell us exactly where we've got to use it. And they calculate where's the best places on the track to use it from looking at the data. And then try it in free practice 1, try it in free practice 2. Then going into qualifying, that's exactly where you got to use it. Then the race, it's exactly the same. And if you actually just as a spectator look at the little blue LED that's in the on the side of the car, you'll see that pretty much everyone is using it in the same place.
I think that was noticeable in the first round of noise from the first or second race. It was going from the old hairpin to McLean's, I think. And every car was just using it at the same time as you said, which again almost defeats the point.
Exactly.
IndyCar stuff. One thing I did want to ask about on the single seat side was the MSA Championship back in 2015. And then from there, it was into you looked at Arden. Were you setting your sights on a career in then, or was it just that was what was available and what you were able to get into?
Yeah, my dream when I was always a kid was to be like most people, was to be a Formula 1 driver. So that was my target. So I always wanted to do Formula One. But you know, I gave Lando Norris a good run for his money. And that's it's a good thing to be able to say that you've beaten a guy who's I think will be a Formula One champion at some point. And you know, we done it on probably a fifth of the budget of what they were doing it on. But you know, we then went into British F3 and you know, raced against Lando again and Colton Herta and some other guys. You know, that I remember even racing. I was teammates of Mazepin for a weekend.
I remember. Yeah, he just did one round, didn't he?
Yeah, he did a race at Snetterton. But it was just we wanted to. I'd love to have been in Formula One, but it was just impossible to get there. You know, I'm sat talking to you at the moment in an office container because I'm out working, and I'm pretty sure that them lads weren't doing. I was working in the week and then driving a racing car on the weekends. I wasn't sort of privileged enough to be able to do all that other stuff, but that was we still live a nice lifestyle. But it's just that's what we were talking about earlier. It's just such a shame that the budgets are just so uncontrollable for a lot of young drivers that makes it actually unaccessible for some guys, because you look at the statistics. I raced against Lando and finished second to him in the championship, so why didn't I then go to European Formula 3? Well, it's just because it's impossible to be able to fund that sort of program. But I was really lucky that I got picked up by it's just a shame, that's all it is. But then I got picked up by BMW and then went and raced for BMW, and they gave me some really good opportunities to done the DTM testing and was a DTM reserve driver for them. But again, it was just unlucky in my career. I arrived at DTM just as DTM was falling, and they were getting rid of drivers, and then they had customer teams, but they wanted budget, and it was just a bit unlucky. And then moved to Aston Martin, moved to our motorsport. Had a really good opening year with them. I think I was the highest British driver in the sprint series. I think I finished 7th or 8th in that championship. But unfortunately COVID hit and our motorsport decided to pull out of racing, and then I had just a couple of years off. Done Spa with my dad and won the 24 hours, which is the first father-son to ever win that, which was pretty cool. Done some touring car bits, pieces. And that's it. And then I had 2 years out just to sort of focus on other things, and now back in touring cars and really enjoying it.
Right. You've done single seaters and the BTCC and GT racing. It was amazing cars and some amazing stuff. Taking the win at the Nova Spa, which is pretty cool. We love Spa and the Nova. I think a lot of people would ask what is the biggest difference between, say, driving a BMW in the BTCC and Martin. I mean, they're all completely different animals, aren't they?
Yeah, the main thing I struggled with was just and that's why if you actually look at when I went into touring cars, the first round was at Rockingham, where I had no testing, and it was just the most horrible weekend, because for people that remember that weekend, every race was pretty much slicks in the wet. We put the slicks on, it would start raining, and I just struggled with the braking. But you know, I'm pretty sure that if I had a couple of days testing and stuff, and that's why towards the end of the year I sort of got more settled into it. But I could carry the same sort of corner speed as Colin, but I just struggled with the brakes. And then that's why, hence the reason why when we went to Silverstone, I was able to bang it on the front row, because I was just getting more and more used to the car, but there's less bumpy braking zones. But then saying that, even we went to Brands Hatch after that, and I think I qualified 8th or something like that, and was the highest BMW. But I just enjoy it because the racing's a lot closer, and I think from a fan's point of view, the racing is so much better in touring car than it is in any other form of, I'd say, in any other form of British motorsport. I like the BSB is great, but I think the BSB and your touring cars are your two most interesting forms of motorsport that are done in the UK. And not being funny, I think Formula One's, the amount of people that watch Formula One race fall asleep and then can't tell you what happened at the end. I don't think there's many people that can fall asleep after a touring car race and not see the ending, because everyone's overtaken. What I'd like to see though from the championship, actually, after running the onboard camera at Croft, I said to and you look at your IndyCar or your NASCAR or even Formula One, they've all got onboard cameras, and quite a lot of the time there's only three cars each weekend that can run these onboard cameras. And I think for spectators and fans, if every car had an onboard camera on it, and like what you have with an app that you can, with Formula One, you can sit on board with all these different drivers, I think you would, especially when my dad was doing it and he's starting at the back coming through, and when I've had these horrible bits of luck and I've been coming through from the back, the action that you don't see on the TV that happens in the mid-pack is you'd be able to see with these onboard cameras would just blow people's minds. So I think that's something that the championship, it would be great to see the championship. I did raise this point actually, if we could try and get more onboard cameras in the cars, because I'm not being funny, you go back 20-30 years ago when they had Super Tourers and every single car had an onboard camera in it, and now we're in the 2022 and we've only got 3 cars with onboard cameras. I think it'd be great to let spectators ride on board with their favourite drivers, whether that's Creasy or whether that's Nick Hamilton or whoever it is, and just
Good enough, Creasy.
Yeah, there's plenty of action. Trust me, when I'm behind him, he's crazy. But we've got a good agreement going on. But yeah, it's just there's a lot of the when you get into the league, especially these people that are the guys that were at the front of the championship this year, and even from myself in previous experience, when you're in the the top 5, top 6, top 10, whatever, you kind of just sort of like banking points, not taking too many risks. Whereas if you're actually watching some of the action at the back, it's just absolute carnage. And I think that especially for myself, for the rest of the year, I've got nothing to lose now, so I will be going for big overtakes and big moves. But it would be great if they could run, I think, more onboard cameras so people can see some more of the action.
I think that's a great. It gives fans more of an insight while they're watching it, more of an understanding of what's going on, and more action, which is what we all love. I always find when I'm at a kid, I find myself drawn to the middle of the pack anyway, because that's where the action tends to be.
Especially like you say, people in race 2 are trying to get into a reverse grid, so that area all of a sudden becomes really, really condensed. But yeah, obviously you want to see the guys at the front. That's natural. Here at the front, you expect to be on the screens, but it'd be great. I know even from the past where I've been leading championships and being at the front, I'm kind of like, well, you guys should actually watch some of the action that's going on at the back because it is wild out there. But you want to see the class of the field at the front, but at the same time, touring cars has got so many good drivers in it, and it's the only championship that I've done that I haven't won in. Every other championship or every other car that I've driven, pretty much I've won or raced or finished on a podium. Touring cars I've finished on the podium, but I've never obviously won. I think that's a credit to how difficult this championship is. But it's just, for me, I feel like it's so unique. Racing against a lot of like superstars, but everyone's like, oh, you're getting touring cars, and it would be like, you'd be straight away at the front. And it's like, well, hang on a second, it's not that. It's so unique. You can take a touring car driver, and you could put them in a GT car, and I'm sure they would struggle. But you can take a GT driver and try and put them in a touring car, and it would be exactly the same. They'd struggle beyond belief. I've always had
Rick Parfitt, got a lot of time for Rick. Rick Parfitt, great driver.
Yeah. Exactly. You look at Rick. Even if you look at Rick Parfitt, he won the British GT Championship, and it shows how difficult the touring cars is. Other examples of that is your Camish. The amount of times I've been lined up next to Dan this year, and me and him are just saying, like, we just like, what is going on? Like, you know, he's had a really successful career outside of touring cars. I've had a successful career outside of touring cars, and we're both, you know, battling at the moment for, you know, 12th, 13th place, or just trying to get inside the top 10. But I do feel like the M Sport engine will hopefully improve for the second half of the year. And I do believe that you will see a different side to our team. As Rory scored some really good points this year. He's just stayed out of trouble and showed his class. Whereas maybe I've had more issues and a bit of bad luck, but at the same time I am a rookie, so maybe I've gone for some moves that aren't quite on, and that little bit of contact that could have been avoided, or, you know, it's just the luck of the draw at the moment a little bit as well.
Yeah. And obviously we're back up the season coming up, and as you say, hopefully things have moved on with the ending, and hopefully coming up in the second half.
Yeah, well, I hope it will get better, because it feels like it can't get any worse. But
sure it will.
Yeah.
Do some luck. I've been saying it all year.
I did say to Ricky at the start of the year, I think he's gained probably a little bit more understanding and respect for touring car drivers as a whole. I think when you jumped into the BMW, you adapted to it very easily, and it was you were on top of your game straight away. And I think you've had to come into a touring car front wheel drive, where it's being developed. All these cars at the moment, the hybrids, making all the teams redevelop their setups, and also the drivers are having to get their head around it a little bit. As much as it hasn't, I don't think the hybrid's making a tremendous amount of difference to the performance of the car. From a power point of view, it's giving certain cars unreliability issues. And again, I think all the cars up and down the grid, doesn't matter if it's a BMW, a Honda, you know, Toyota, it doesn't matter what it is, a Ford, they've all experienced hybrid issues in some form or another. And it'll just take, I think it's going to take the team the first half of the year to get all those little niggles out. And I think now, the second half of the year, you'll see some really good racing, because the teams are up to speed now, and you shouldn't see any issues. I sit and I look at it with wearing an old hat, really. I think the racing's a bit stagnant at the moment, and I feel I stand at the track and I'm watching it from an educated point of view, and I'm thinking he should be coming through the field. You know, some of these drivers have had problems in race one, and I'm not necessarily referring to Ricky, other drivers, and the hybrid at the moment is not allowing the drivers to race how we used to race 3-5 years ago, and whether that's hybrid, whether that's success ballast, or whether the difference in the tyres now is not as much as it used to be, because you could have a soft tyre against a hard tyre. You never knew when people were running them, and people could come through. You know, I've done it a dozen times, hundreds of times, come through from the back to get into a top 6 position, and it's just that really doesn't happen. The only person I've seen do it actually this year, and I had to give him full credit for it, was Shedden at Croft.
Yeah.
He came from the back of the grid through to 10th or 11th, and he drove really well. And I think that's one of Gordon's best drives for the last couple of seasons, if I'm honest. He's the only person I've seen that's been able to demonstrate doing that. But the Honda's been exceptionally good around Croft. Or the Dynamics Honda has always been exceptionally good around Croft for many years. Cause I know I've battled him many a time at that circuit. So I think, you know, I'm hoping the second half of the year will make the racing a little bit more exciting, because the teams are going to be on top of the hybrid and some of the mechanical issues. I'm really hoping that Ricky's going to turn a corner, and it's something I said to him at the start of the year, that don't expect results in the first half of the year. It's going to take you at least half a season to get your head around front wheel drive, you know, get your head around the hybrid, you know, and unfortunately he's had a few issues where he's not scored as many points as he would like to have done. But one thing's for sure, the pace is definitely there in the Toyota, and it's definitely there in Ricky. So, you know, I'd like to see him rubbing shoulders with Rory right the way through for the rest of the year, and scoring alongside Rory, because Rory's a class act. The Speedworks team are a class team, and the Toyota's a great car. So all the ingredients are there.
Well, I think we've seen it both with Rory and with you, Ricky. Everything's there in having quite a point there. And let's hope, as you say, that in the second half of the year, the things that have kind of, I don't know, slowed the racing down, so to speak, as you alluded to, hope that's all been sorted out, the team is more level with the hybrid and that kind of thing. So, yeah, let's look for a better second half of the season.
Just what
I've got you, Rob, and well, I can both of you. Your accident at Silverstone, Rob, a few years ago, when you rolled a big accident. I've always wondered, Ricky, what's it like seeing an accident like that involving a family member? Does it kind of worry you more? I suppose it would do.
Yeah, I think I was actually racing that weekend in the Formula Ford, and you know, families and health is more important than racing. So I actually missed the last race just to make sure my dad was okay. But yeah, it's the risk that you have to take, and you know, it's just a freak accident.
Yeah. And I've been to the Silverstone Interactive Museum, Rob, and there's a little video of you talking about the safety crews there. Just a quick word on them, because I think we can all agree our safety our marshals.
Motorsport wouldn't happen without volunteers. Motorsport wouldn't happen without people that are incredibly enthusiastic for motorsport. And a lot of the marshals are volunteers. They get their expenses paid at best normally, and they stand there in horrendous conditions some days and put their lives at risk. And you only got to look at the marshals at Silverstone in the Formula 1 this year. You know, when the F1 car crashed. You know, these guys, they went rolling, barreling in to get that driver out. I can't remember the name of the driver now.
Joe, wasn't it?
Yeah. And they were in there. That car could have caught fire. Something could have happened. Yeah, and they were there. They were there getting them out, which is a credit to them. And it wouldn't matter if it's a Formula 1 car, you know, a touring car, a club racer. You know, their standard of professionalism is there, and their commitment. And like I say, they could be at Castle Combe on a wet Sunday, or Pembury, or they could stand at Silverstone, you know, at Silverstone in the sunshine at a Formula 1 track. You know, these guys, you know, they do it all, no matter what, for the love of the sport. And I think they're very underestimated, the commitment that they do, and I have to take my hat off to them, because they've helped me out of many cars when I've had a lot of crashes. And it's whether it's the marshals or even the medics, and I think the medics deserve a massive shout out for some of the things that they do for drivers. You ain't got to look at people like you know, take Roman Grosjean. You know, a lot of the F1 marshals are English around, and you know, the key marshals, they actually go around and do a lot of the F1 stuff as well. And you know, it just shows they got him out of that car. A lot of other marshals might not have been able to get him out of the car, you know, and that saved Grosjean's life. I know he was getting out of the car, but they were there to help pull him out. The doctor pulled him out to stop him from getting burnt. And you know, I owe my life virtually to them. They got me out of the car. You know, the accident that hurt more was the one that rolled, which was very spectacular. Got a lot of hits on YouTube and stuff like that. But it was more the second one at Silverstone, where I got the really bad concussion in 2017. And if I could say anything to any young driver or any driver, take concussion seriously, because that is a career-ending injury. You know, you can break your leg, you can break your arm. Ricky's broke a lot of his bones, and he's still fit, but is sharp up top. You know, you can't see the injuries with concussion. It's very hard to measure, and it's something that really needs a lot more investment and development. You know, in concussion, because I tell you now, it doesn't matter if you're a rugby player, a footballer, or a boxer. You know, jockeys, they get a lot of concussion when they fall off their horses. You know, it's something that's a big unknown, and yeah, I done the thing at Silverstone in the museum in the reality bit, and it was good. I've not actually seen it. A few people have commented on it.
It is good.
I think I was concussed when I done it.
We'll just take it back to recently. We have like Bobby Thompson. He had the role at Brock 2 years ago, and last year with concussion, and it's just it's something that it doesn't really affect the people watching because there's no visible injury. But as you say, it's very, very serious.
Yeah, I think, you know, you look at Croft's had some big crashes. When you look at the lad in Ford Focus, Luke Davenport had a life-threatening crash. You know, that was awful. I witnessed that. That was in the wet. In the wet in qualifying, I saw Jeff Smith hit him, and yeah, Jeff Smith had bad injuries. Davenport had bad injuries. Gavin Smith had bad injuries. It was horrendous, and it shows how quickly something can go wrong. And then when you looked at Alton Park with the recent crash with Turkington and Lloyd, you know, very, very unfortunate, you know, and you know they both luckily walked away from that, you know, a little bit bruised but nothing really broken. And it's something, again, you know, motorsport is very dangerous, and we have to really take that on board. And you know, we train. I think what touring car drivers do, majority professional racing drivers, they're very strong. So they do a lot of training, and that actually prevents you from getting injured. One of the biggest things that prevents you actually getting injured and breaking bones is how strong you are muscular. So when you have your accident, your muscles lock up, and it protects your bone from breaking. So again, you know, for any professional drivers, get in the gym. That's my advice. Get in the gym and train, because it not only makes you a better driver, it keeps you safe.
There's going to be some gyms doing well after the weekend.
Yeah, I think a few touring car drivers could take a few tips from that. Are they going to do the? It'd be quite interesting. Do you guys still do the mid-season weighing? It's normally like sort of the shame.
Yeah.
That's a big topic. Who's gonna be well overweight because everybody trains in the for the April for press day, you know, they normally take everybody's weight, and then we come back second half of season, and it always used to be a few people that have been on the pies and paella in the summer break and come back, and I should jump to get into their race suits.
I don't know who that was.
Oh, I could drop a few names, but that probably wouldn't be good.
I had a chat with Ollie Jack. These are on the sprint of mine. Just through no fault of his own. Just his own metabolism. He said he really struggled with it.
Yeah, it is.
Sorry, Ollie.
Yeah, but you know, there's. I was always very lucky, and I've never really had too much of an issue. But I know a few of the drivers sort of let them go over the summer holiday and come back, and they're a little bit tubby, shall we say?
Carrington Palace. Just very quickly, I don't want to leave you too late. Fill out and stuff. Just a quick word on Joseph Plato. Obviously, he's been in it for forever. And this was 5 years last year. Although he said he might look at next year maybe. He's done amazing things with BTCC, hasn't he? Alongside Matt Neal.
Yeah, do you want Ricky to answer that or me to answer that?
Either or, really.
I'll go first. Jason is very, very unique, you know, on track and off track, and You know, people love him or hate him. I'm a fan, always have been a fan. You know, people say, why did you got me Jason? It's because Jason's actually one of the best touring car drivers that's I believe has ever been. But he's a front wheel drive specialist, and that's really where his strength is front wheel drive. And he had a couple of years where we said, oh, Jason's lost it. Jason hasn't lost it. He just didn't get his head around rear wheel drive. You look at him now. I was teammates with him in my last year of touring cars 2019, and he's fantastically fast. Over one lap, Jason is fantastically fast, and in battle he's very strong, and you know, technically he's very good as well. So that all of those things are what's kept Jason there. I'm amazed he's been able to remain fit enough with how much he drinks, how much he smokes. I think that's just he's a freak of nature in that sense.
Just one of those guys.
When I get out the race car and I think I'm relatively fit, and I feel Jason, the only gym Jason knows is a truck driver called Jim, because he doesn't go to a gym. And you know, he would have a fag before he gets in the car, and if he could have a sneaky drink, he'd have a sneaky drink as well, but he doesn't. But no, he's great. Matt Neal again, fantastic driver for many years. But I'd love to see Jason do another year, if I'm honest. I'd love to see him get to the maximum amount of race wins, and I think it'd be brilliant for the championship.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah, and even from my point of view, you know, Jason as a youngster coming in, and obviously watching my dad race against Jason for all these years, and I think and Matt, you know, they're two legends. It'd be great even if Matt even just came back, because they should have. They must have, even if Matt just came back and done a one-off race or something. I think that'd be. If Jason is genuinely going to have his last season this year, I reckon it'd be great if Matt Neal jumped in for the final round.
That would be
in the Honda, and then my dad would probably jump out there as well.
What about me? Okay.
and then my dad would jump out there, and they can all have a proper ding dong for the final one. But no, I think it's great that he's still out there racing, and you know, I'd love to see him reach the 100. I definitely think he can do it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I've understood the whole Clay Termsy Neil thing. It's always been something that separates everyone. I've understood it, but I've always loved them both, just because of what they've done and how they go racing, and no matter how old they get, not saying they're old.
Yeah,
But
we're all of that age. I'm actually younger than Jason and Matt, so I could come back and still do more racing. So yeah, I might have a bit of grey on my chin, but I am younger than Matt and Jason.
Any plans to go, Rob?
I'd love to. I've had some issues with my shoulder actually. It's why I've been a little bit off radar. I've had 4 operations on my shoulder. People might have seen me walking around in a sling at the racetracks this year. But I am now fit, I am capable, so if anybody does want to do the second half of the season, and because they've been eating too many pies, and they can't fit in their race seat, I'm race ready. I'll get in a car tomorrow.
Fantastic. Love to see that. Lots of love in the comments for that. Just very quickly, for both of you really, it's a real bonus having you on. Is there any theory that you'd love to have tried, whether it be NASCAR, IndyCar, or Aussie V8?
You go first.
I would love to have. I just wish DTM never really stopped. I felt like everything, all the ducks were in a line. The testing programs are going really well. Everything was looking like it was all sorted. And then, unfortunately, the money just sort of started to run dry. So that's a series that I done loads of testing for, and I was at every single weekend. I even ended up being in the commentary box, commentating for him. And yeah, I just unfortunately I wish that that could have happened for another couple of years, and maybe I might have been sat in one of them cars. But no, that's the only series I think I would have liked to have driven.
I think for me, I'd like to have done maybe Aussie V8s or DTM or NASCAR. I think I'd be a good NASCAR driver. I think my sort of attitude towards sort of just getting stuck in, I think I'd be a good NASCAR driver, or Aussie V8s.
Yeah, love them both.
You
probably get driven around the course by this, as I do. People say about NASCAR, it's just going in circles. It's so annoying when people say that, isn't it? It's the same as the Indy 500. It's not just going around in circles.
No, there's so much more to it. You know, you just look at the Indy 500. It's one of the most famous races in the world. You know, look at the crowds. Look at the crowds it brings in. It's just unbelievable. You know, NASCAR as well. You know, I don't like it when people say that, and I'd say to anybody, jump in a hot rod and go and do just a quarter of a mile oval around Ipswich, Vauxhall Stadium. You know,
see how you get on.
See how you get on. Because I tell you now, there's not that many people could keep up with the current hot rod drivers. They're another level.
Yeah. Just because it's going one way in a circle doesn't make it easy. What we'd all be doing.
Well, you know, it's like people say that about, you know, any sport. You know, about a jockey. Well, why do the best jockeys in the world always win races? It's because they know how to do it, and they, you know, it doesn't matter if you're doing NASCAR, any form of racing. You know, there is a knack to it, and it takes a lot to get the car and to trust the car at that speed. At every time you're going to turn into a corner at 180, 200 miles an hour. You know, you've got to be so brave. I mean, incredibly brave.
I think bravery is the word. I mean, I've spoken to guys who have won the Indy 500 one day. I've spoken to like Danny Cowan and Ari Lyondike and Will Power. But more so Danny Sullivan and Lyondike. You're going into turn one at the Indy at the Indianapolis Speedway, 200 miles an hour, completely in control. You get a gust of wind, and you're in the wall.
Yeah.
And that's the bravery thing, committing to something, knowing that something like that could happen. For 200 laps. It's unreal.
I think bravery and concentration is just at another level in IndyCar and NASCAR when they're on the high speed ovals. I've never done it. I'd love to do it. I used to love like turn one at Rockingham. You know, people would say to me, what's that? I said, it's flat. They said, no, you can't be flat. I said, I'm flat. No, you're never flat. I said, I'm flat. And it was something that, you know, lap one, go out in free practice, you'd have to take it flat. Well, you might have the slightest of lifts, you know, and then it's flat. And
I would.
But it was lovely, and that's just one corner of an oval, and I would just love to have done Rockingham, you know, in something other than a touring car where you could like go around the full circuit. And I wish I'd have gone and done like just a track day experience there in a NASCAR or whatever cars they have there.
Yeah, that'd be good fun. Not in my hand. Be awful. Again, very quickly to both of you. Favourite circuit that you've driven?
For me, I'd probably say I really like the Nordschleife. But yeah, and Nürburgring is a great circuit, but the Nordschleife, it's awesome to drive, but at night time at the 24-hour weekend, it's just. I remember coming on the radio, I thought there was like you can actually smell at night time when they get all the flares out, and there's just about tens of thousands of people around the circuit, and they're there all week, so they have all their barbecues, and you can actually, as you're coming around the track, you can smell the barbecues as you're driving around. So like if you drive around, smell a little bit of barbecue over there, and then a different type of barbecue, and then you got the fireworks going off, the flares going off, the smokes going all over the track. You'll be driving along, and all of a sudden you just go into an area, and it'll just be the smoked out, and you can't see anything. But what I really like, and you even look at the NASCAR and IndyCar, there's just no rubbish about track limits and stuff like that. It's just a proper track. It's a proper track to drive, and there's none of this track limit stuff. And that's the biggest thing I don't like about motorsport, is this whole track limit stuff. I just wish they'd just get rid of it. And I understand there was that big crash the other day with putting that sausage curb in. You look at what it done to that Aston Martin. It's like, if you had a gravel track, would that have happened? Probably not. And it's like, we're changing the circuits. That's, as drivers, we're all coming together, and we're talking about, in touring cars anyway, all our touring car drivers are coming together, and we're trying to improve the way they dictate the track limits. And I personally, I think it's ridiculous, but it is good, because we'll see on the same hymn sheet, is you'll see now throughout the season, you'll see tyre stacks being placed on the corners, and this is something that, as drivers, we're saying to them, let's get rid of the track limits and let's put tyre stacks there. So if they're saying, so they're saying through the chicane, for example, at Donington, there's track limits there. Well, no, for touring cars, there's no track limits at that chicane, because we've now, as drivers, decided that we're going to put tyre stacks there, so everyone runs as far as they can to the tyre stack.
Right. And if you get it wrong.
Yeah, if you get it wrong, but it's a harsh consequence, I think. If you get it wrong, I was behind Josh Cook actually in practice after we had this meeting, and at the first round in free practice 1, and he got it wrong going into the chicane, and he hit the tyre stack and it absolutely obliterated his car. And then for FP2, I think he only got out for the last couple of laps just to shake the car down. But you look at it and it's like, can we not just go back to putting gravel tracks back on the circuits, or even the gravel tracks are so far away from the circuits, can we not just run right out to those and just, I know it make it look a little bit ridiculous that we're running miles off the track, but at the same time, at least everyone's driving to the gravel track and everyone's driving to the limit, and it'll make the racing a lot better as well, because if we're driving side by side, going into a corner and there's a tyre stack, for example, in a chicane, instead of trying to drive side by side with each other, we're just having to give it up to the person that's on the inside, because you know that in touring cars they'll probably push you into the tyre stack. So I really don't like I understand why we've got the tyre stacks, but I really, really don't like the track limits, and I really think that it's something that the UK need to seriously sort out and police a lot better, because my dad went through touring cars, and we never had a discussion about track limits, and now the biggest discussion in motorsport now is stupid track limits, and it's just boring, it's difficult to explain it to people, it's just not.
It's repetitive as well.
Yeah, it's rubbish, isn't it? Who enjoys it? No one.
I've been saying this for years. I grew up in the 80s. I got into F1 first in 86. And I remember watching the Austrian Grand Prix in 87 on the other before they pushed the old Osterreich thing. And the first right, and the curbs were like that. And they were staying off them. So obviously you don't want the car getting launched, but there was a curb, gravel, and drivers thought, I don't fancy that. So they just kept it within the confines of the track. That's probably a bit too simplistic on my part. It's probably like road text as well, but I've always thought if there's a track laid out, it's laid out for a reason, to try and stay on it. But
don't make it faster. As drivers and competitors, if there's a way to make it faster, everyone's going to do that.
Yeah.
And it's, you can put the massive sausage curves there, you can put tyre stacks there, whatever you want to put there. But can we not just cut it out and just go back to grass? Because then it allow people to have better racing. You'll be able to drive side by side, and if someone then starts to push you, instead of having to back out of it because there's a tyre stack, or back out of it because there's a big curb, you'll probably be able to stay on there and get nudged onto the grass. and you then might get the inside for the next corner, and you might then give it back, and it just make. And that's why the Nordschleife works so well, because there's no sausage curbs, there's no tyre stacks, there's just old school racing, and that's the reason why that's my favourite track.
Yeah. And I like the solution again, just grass, because it's like how much can you play on it without losing out, and how much can can you go racing, and it's finding that limit without having to hit anything or run 100 yards offline. Anyway, hopefully it will happen. Formula One, you both raced against amazing races in various series. Are there any that stand out?
So, race against who did you say?
You just raced against some amazing races, each in the touring cars or in single seaters or whatever. Are there any that stand out? Excuse me, above any others as the best that you've raced against?
Best drivers. I don't know really. It's hard because there's a lot of good drivers. I've raced against some fantastic drivers, and if I name one, somebody else will say, "Oh, I thought it might have been me." So I don't know. It's difficult really. I'd have to say I'd probably flip it round in another way. Who do I enjoy racing against the most?
Much better.
I'd race against Jason Plato all day, every day, because you're going to get hit, and you're going to get hit hard, but you'll get hit fairly, and that's the difference with somebody that's got experience. Because Jason doesn't want to win by being underhanded; he wants to win because he's the best, and he wouldn't hit you in a way that would ruin your race. He would be quite cunning how he'd do it, and he would push you wide a little bit, but you could come back at him. And I've done that many a time with somebody like Jason. Another person who's always been quite fair is somebody like Chilton. Tom's been very much like that. He would concede when he needed to. And that's what I think has been. And I'm going to say this about the new era of touring car drivers that are coming through, which I've raced against. People don't know when to concede a place, and they don't know when to overtake, and they make silly overtakes that end in really bad damage or punctures or something like that, and then they defend when they're clearly the slower car, and you go like, you're holding yourself up by defending, and you're holding me up, and now everybody's getting held up, and it's just going to be a car crash.
Yeah, of course.
And it's just like, let me get through and go with me, rather than try and hold me back and hold you're buggering your race up and you're buggering mine up. Let me come by, and we can all still, I can pull you along. And there's a lot of people that say, so I would say certain drivers don't know when to give up a place, and they end up having damage. And people also then try and overtake when there's no place physical to overtake, and they hit you. Whereas real good experienced touring car drivers can overtake, and they can hit you, and you get a bit of damage, you might get pushed wide, but you can come back. Nothing's going to end your race. And something like Jason doesn't end people's races. Matt Neal was good at that. Matt, I'd say, would be probably slightly harder to overtake, but again, he's just you would never normally be taken off by Matt, and that's the sort of racing I think has built the structure for touring car to be so good over the years, and it just needs to be hard but fair.
I think it's great that you said about Matt and Jason. Obviously, people always say fans so and so will wait to take people off, and then he moans about when it happens to him, and thereafter. And it's good that someone of your experience has said that they'll both race hard, but they'll both know where the limit is.
Yeah, and you look at, take my old teammate Colin Turkington. Colin's a fabulous racer, absolutely fabulous racer, and he doesn't take people off. He overtakes, and he also knows how to defend, and he defends when he knows he can defend, but he won't hold himself up and somebody else up by over defending. And that's the point I'm making. A lot of people over defend and they lose a second a lap or 2 seconds a lap in the lap time. And you go, well, you're only going in one place now. Everybody's going to be on you in a minute, and that's crazy. So Colin's a real class driver, obviously being a multiple champion, and he's just fantastic overtaking cleanly. You very rarely see a front, any damage to the front of Colin's car.
No, it's a good point. Oh, that's true. I'm a big fan of Colin. I always have been. And then people call him boring. Well, he isn't there to spin crap things, isn't he? He's great. Proper driver.
Yeah, very. I think a lot of people could learn from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Rick, same question. Apart from your dad, who's the best?
I really enjoyed racing. Like, if you went in touring cars, in single seaters, I battled my whole life pretty much with Lando, and he was really good. He was again someone that was super fair. I remember driving side by side with him for nearly a whole lap around Alton Park, just doing cutbacks on each other and fighting. But again, he was someone that was just really clean, hard and fair. Never once did I take Lando out, and never once did he take me out. We never crashed. We pushed each other wide, obviously, a couple of times, but we never ever, I don't think I can recall us ever taking each other out. So he's probably someone that I really enjoyed racing. If I go back and have a race with him, I definitely would. But in touring cars, I found myself the whole time, and it's quite difficult because I was trying to learn the front wheel drive thing. Every race, I'm always with Stephen Jelly. And me and Stephen have a bit of a laugh about it.
Who I would actually say is probably one of the nicest people on the grid. I've been teammates with Stephen for many years over the years and watched him race. And he's probably one of the nicest people on the grid.
Yeah.
And probably the fittest. I can tell you now, he won't be eating too many pies.
Didn't he do the marathon last year? Or
yeah.
The London Marathon?
Yeah, he's done.
I'm sure I saw him doing something like that.
Iron Man. He's super fit.
I think he's really underrated as well.
Yeah.
Hugely underrated.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Steve, I really enjoyed racing Stephen. Me and him have had some really hard, fair battles, and he sat behind me in race 2 at Alton Park, and I was expecting him a couple of times to give me a nudge, or race 1, I can't remember, and he didn't. And then obviously had the reverse grid pole, and I then shot him a text and just said, fair play, mate. It was pretty cool. But yeah, we were stuck together in Fruxton in both races, stuck together at Alton Park in both races. I don't think I saw it. I think was I behind him in race 1. I was behind him in race 1 then at Croft, so it was 6 races or 7 races all behind him until I had the puncture. But he's someone that just races really hard and really fair, and I got a lot of time for him. And so far in touring cars, he's definitely someone that But it's interesting, like my dad was saying, that the people that because I've had the bad luck or whatever, and started at the back and tried to come through, the amount of things you see coming through the pack, and I must admit, it's the more experienced guys that give you space. And I've gone down the inside of some people, and you've been all the way alongside them, and they're still turning in, and it's like, mate, come on. If you carry on turning in, you're gonna get pushed off the track, or you're going to damage my car, you're going to damage your car. And that's happened quite a few times, just coming through with even just some of the younger guys with less experience. And it's like, like my dad's saying, there's a time when you just got to just accept that someone's coming through and just accept it. Defend as hard as you want, and I always say to people, race me as hard as you can, but you know, if someone goes down the inside of me, I've had it even with, if Mike's still watching, I've had it with Michael. He's gone down the inside of me a couple of times, and I've gone, all right, I'll try it, and then let him go, and vice versa. He's raced really hard and clean and fair with me, and yeah, I remember even at Thruxton, his car was working really well, and you know, I thought, I'll get on the back of him, and we worked together and come through the field, and then we've had it vice versa the other way around. But yeah, it's just, like I say, it's sometimes knowing when to give up, and other times knowing when you can fight. You know, the last 2-3 laps of a race, you know, you've got to get your elbows out. But when you're on lap 3 or 4 and someone's coming up behind you that's really quick, it's like, come on, you know. Or like say someone's me or someone else has crashed in race 1. You're starting at the back for race 2. Is it really worth defending for your life for P17 or P18? Or is it worth just letting them go and then actually just trying to follow them? But
it's the guy and girls with a bit more experience that are the most fun to race with.
yeah, definitely.
Right.
Well, it's 2.5 hours.
Yes.
9. You guys are still at work. I really appreciate you guys coming on to have a chat. Nice to have you on as well, Rob.
Yep.
That was a nice little bonus.
Yeah, it was. I wasn't expected to be in on this, so
apologies
if I sort of gate crashed anybody's party and said anything out of tune.
I think
as long as Ricky's happy, we're all happy.
Yeah. Well, thank you for letting me come on the show.
No, it's been great. Really great speaking to you guys. I appreciate this time, and all the guys in the comments who put comments and questions in. Thanks very much, everyone.
Yeah.
But we're going to draw a line under it. Thank you very much, guys. Really appreciate your time.
Cheers.
See ya. Bye.
Thanks a lot. Cheers, guys.